We all have an inner dialogue, like that voice that speaks in our head. And sometimes it makes us miserable, sometimes it makes us super happy. And the defining characteristic of this inner realm, inner dialogue, is just that voice. Literally, that voice that speaks to us, reminding us of what we fear, of what we have to do tomorrow, what we did yesterday. But sometimes this inner dialogue can get stuck. You can find yourself thinking and rethinking the same thoughts. You might even just feel frightened at your own inner dialogue. And it turns out that what determines whether we suffer or not from our relationship with our inner dialogue and our thoughts, it boils down to the beliefs we have about our thoughts. Not to the content of the thoughts itself, but to the beliefs we have about these thoughts. I mean, you might be thinking, oh my god, my life is miserable all in your head. But if you don't give any importance to it and you believe that in fact this is just a thought, random depressing thought going through your mind, well, that won't have power over you. And this applies to all kinds of thoughts. Now, in this channel, we talked about intrusive thoughts where you might be struggling with repetitive, intrusive ideas about, I don't know, killing someone or raping someone or the most outrageous and scary topics. But this applies to really all kinds of stuff. Maybe ruminating about a project you have for school, about a conversation you had like 5 years ago. And in this video, I just want to share some of the beliefs that can really get you stuck in your thoughts, can really make your inner realm very tiring and frustrating. Some of the beliefs I'm going to talk to you about today have been clearly discussed in this beautiful book, Overcoming Unwanted Intrusive Thoughts, where the authors shine some light on what are some of the misconceptions and the myths we hold about our thoughts. And they start with the first one, which is the myth that our thoughts are under our control. Now, I've looked for some studies online and I've seen that some people estimate that we think about 60,000 thoughts per day. I found that these estimates were not so reliable, so I've looked for a paper and it says about 6,000 thoughts per day. Now, either it's 6,000 or 60,000, it's a lot. And I really want you to imagine how much effort you will need to put to produce 6,000 thoughts consciously every day. I think that would just explode our mind and deplete our cognitive resources. And that's why most of our thoughts, in fact, are just random and automatic. I think here it's very useful to bring a distinction between thinking and thoughts. Thinking is that sort of conscious, thoughtful, directive process you might engage with in your inner realm with your thoughts and really focus about a certain topic, narrow your ideas purposely to think something through. But thoughts, on the other hand, they are just random. They're just automatic, and I think, not sure about an estimate, but if I were to, I think they're about 90% of our inner realm speaking is just random automatic thoughts. And I think you know deep down that most of your thoughts are automatic. You might be walking on the street, you see a dog, and all of a sudden you start thinking about the dog you used to have as a child, or the dog of your parents and family or friends. I mean, that was just an automatic thought. Seeing the dog was the cue, and you had no control over just thinking about dogs. Now, this is just an example. There's plenty of moments in our lives when we realize we're just drawn from our thoughts automatically. Maybe you're speaking with someone and you just start thinking about dinner, or you're trying to focus on a lecture or at work and you think about something else. Well, that's just automatic. No control over it whatsoever. And this applies also to these more extreme and obscure thoughts some of us have, like those intrusive thoughts I was mentioning about before, about harming someone or killing someone. It really doesn't matter the topic. Our mind just generates random noise. And so believing, going back to the myth, that we are somehow responsible for all of our thoughts because they are under our own control is totally absurd. It's not only scientifically not valid, it's also something that if you believe, you're just gonna end up in deep trouble. You're gonna feel like every thought actually speaks about yourself, about your character, and treat your thinking as reality. And again, just because you can think some thoughts on purpose doesn't mean you can control them all. And giving so much importance to thoughts is not so good. I mean, you might be telling yourself to think positive thoughts and I need to think positive, I need to think positive, and then a second after doubt creeps in. Every battle to try to control your mind and your thoughts most of the time just fails. And it's not your fault, it's just how the brain works. And I believe we live in a society where we're not very much aware of this. If you're struggling with overthinking or intrusive thoughts or OCD or whatever, some people might just tell you, just try to not think about it. But it does not work like that. Again, most of the thoughts are automatic. So instead of not trying to think about something, we should try to change our beliefs to our thoughts. The content of our thoughts might remain the same for years, for months, or whatever, and it's the moment we change our approach, how we relate and identify with these thoughts, that truly can make a difference. Another myth that the authors touch upon is that our thoughts indicate our character. Now, character is about the choices we make. How we choose to act and behave is what defines our character, not our thoughts. Because when it comes to thoughts, as we have just spoken about, if they're automatic and if you cannot control them, then there's no issue for character. You cannot choose. So thinking that somehow your thoughts reveal a hidden part of yourself or speak about the person you are and the life you live, it's absolutely wrong. You might be thinking the most outrageous and ego dystonic things, or in other words, just thoughts that are completely the opposite of your character, and yet conduct a well behaved, thoughtful life in line with your morals. And it's normal to have thoughts that are the opposite of our character, like those killing thoughts, harming people, or sexual thoughts, or contamination, disease, and death, whatever topic. We all have them. There's studies showing that up to 90% of the people do. Yet we don't call these people crazy or label them as bad just because they think. We actually look at their behavior. And you should do the same. Stop looking at what you think. Instead, focus on what you do. That's where your character is defined. And finally, a last myth is that the thoughts we have somehow relieve hidden intentions or speak about our deeper self. Now, this is not true. I think this idea comes from maybe some psychoanalytic theories, Freud and all that stuff, which said that, yeah, our thoughts are kind of a reflection of our unconscious. They may actually reveal hidden desires or hidden wishes. I truly don't believe that's the case, and these authors the same. Just because you think something doesn't mean you want to do it, or you have some kind of intention that you want to do it. I mean, otherwise 90% of the people out there in the world will be crazy and having some sort of hidden malicious intentions. They want to kill, want to rape, and want to whatever kind of thing. It's a myth that thoughts reveal intentions. Most of them, if not all of them, are just a result of random associations, using the environment triggering thoughts. You're not responsible for them, and they do not indicate who you are or what you want to do. Thank you for watching this video. There's some other myths I'm gonna come up with in a second video, also drawn a bit from this book. Stay tuned, stay hopeful, and don't forget that you're not your thoughts. Peace.